Um, Last Precious and Sunday, are you there with me?
Yes, sir.
There is a small inches, and we may need to adjourn this class. We'll post and wait and continue from 4. Is it possible? Let's rejoin by 4. I have to excuse them. Let them use the venue for something. By 4, we'll convene to finish our class. Is that okay? Apologies for this inconveniences. Thank you so much. So let's meet by 4. You can still click on the same link and we'll continue.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So I'll just shut down my system and excuse you to continue, so that we two of us cannot be talking. This is why I need this thing in my office. If I have my cable, I'll just be doing my things. I don't need to be coming. So
Okay.
I will calculate that money. Maybe don't let the killer issue.
Good afternoon, students. How are you? Now welcome to the second semester of Principles of Economics. And this session, we are going to discuss money. We are going to discuss money, and then we'll look at 4 learning outcomes as follows. Learning outcome 1: explain the meaning of money. Then learning outcome 2: we're going to learn the functions of money. And the learning outcome 3: characteristics of money. And lastly, learning outcome 4 is similarities and differences between money and other commodities. Learning outcome 1: meaning, functions, and characteristics of money. Money is generally defined as any good that has value and is accepted as a medium of exchange in an economy. This definition, though not conclusive, is in accordance with one of the functions of money, that is, medium of exchange. The money performs many functions in the economy. This includes 1. Medium of exchange. Money serves as a means of exchange of goods and services. It is used to buy goods and services. Then another function of money is it serves as a store of value. You can store your value in form of money. Then the third one is it serves as a means of deferred payment. You can defer your payment to a later date by using money. Then it serves as a unit of account and as well as measures of exchange value. Money is used to measure exchange value of goods and services. This is done by using the price of goods, because price of goods are the exchange value. They don't really reflect the value of the commodity, but reflect the value of the exchange. Characteristics of money, that's another learning outcome. Money is characterized by 1, generally accepted by everybody. Money is accepted by everybody. There's nobody in this world that doesn't like money. Even mad people, they like money. It is relatively durable. Money is durable. Money can transcend weeks, days, months, years, decades, and so on. It is relatively scarce, and that is why people look for money here and there. You chase money here and there. Money doesn't come to you in your house. You have to look for money because it is scarce. Money is portable. You can carry money from here to here. It is easy to carry from place to place. And then money is recognizable. When you see money, you know that this is money. And it is homogeneous. Money are the same. Naira is the same naira. 10 naira in Lagos is the same as 10 naira in Abuja, is the same as 10 naira in Maiduguri, and so on and so forth. Then the value of money is relatively stable. Okay, the value is relatively stable so as to encourage lending and borrowing. Money and other goods are similar. There are similarities between money and other commodities. Number one, there is fluctuation in the values of money and other commodities. Money and other commodities are used for exchange. Both money and commodities have their respective markets, and both are demanded by people. The prices of both are determined by the forces of demand and supply, and they are all regarded as commodities. You see, I want to emphasize on one. We have money markets, we have commodity markets. That is number two. Say both money and commodities have their respective markets. We have money markets, which is composed of financial and not even non-financial institutions. Then we have what is called a commodity markets. You know, we have cement market, we have the clothes market, we have breweries, we have drinks, and so on and so forth. Then money is different from other commodities in the following ways. Money is generally accepted as a medium of exchange, but other commodities are not. Money is portable, can carry money to everywhere, but not all other commodities may be carried or may be portable. Money is relatively scarce, while other commodities are not. So there are other differences between money and other commodities, especially with regards to the functions of money. For instance, money can serve as a store of value. You can store your value in form of money, but many other commodities cannot be stored because some are perishable with time. Some their values depreciate with time. Now, study section 7, theories of demand for money. We said earlier that one of the characteristics of demand of money is that people demand for it. Okay, money can be demanded, and so we have theories that relate to demand for money. And in this session, we are going to learn learning outcomes. Number one, we are going to explain the theories of demand for money, the classical approach to demand for money, Keynesian approach to demand for money, and explain the total. So we are going to the one thing that I want us to pay particular attention is the difference between classical approach to demand for money and the Keynesian approach to demand for money. Demand for money arises from two important functions of money. That is, money acts as a medium of exchange, and the second one is that it is a store of value. Thus, individuals and businesses wish to hold money partly in cash and partly in form of assets. And there are three theories to the demand for money: the classical, the Keynesian, and the post-Keynesian approaches. We discuss this approach one after the other. Classical approach. This approach view on demand for money is inherent in the quantity theory of money. The classicalists emphasized the transactions demand for money in terms of the velocity of circulation of money. This is because money acts as a medium of exchange, facilitate the exchange of goods and services. So money change hands, and that is the velocity. The velocity of money is defined as the number of times that money change hands between individuals. where the demand for money is given as MV is equal to PT, where M is the total quantity of money, V is the velocity of circulation, P is the price level, and T is the total amount of goods and services changed for money. Now, the right hand side of the equation represents the demand for money, which is in fact depends on the volume of the transactions to be taken in the economy. So MV represents the supply of money. Thus, equation becomes demand for money is equals to that. So you can see that the demand for money, according to classicalists, it depends is a direct it's a direct relationship with the velocity of money in circulation. Okay, so the Cambridge School further refined the classical theory on the demand for money. According to them, the demand for money equation is MD equals to K per Y, where K is a fraction of the real money income which people wish to hold in cash and demand deposit. P is the price level and Y is the aggregate real income. Okay, now the K is the coefficient of represent of a relationship. Now the classical approach has some criticism. The demand for money has been criticized on many grounds. One of them is that it has neglected the store of value function of money. That they just emphasize on the medium of exchange function of money, but it has neglected, it has ignored the store of value function of money. The classical emphasize the exchange function of money, which is like accepted as a go between to facilitate buying and selling. Their view that money performs a neutral role in the economy and that it is barren and would not multiply if stored in form of wealth. So in addition, they say little or nothing about the nature of the relationship that one expect to exist between such variables as wealth, interest rate, etc. So in view of the weaknesses or criticisms of the classical approach to demand for money, the Keynes in 1936 came up with his general theory of interest, income, and employment, remedy the weaknesses in the classical theory of demand for money. In his view, liquidity preferences to explain, in his view, he used a new term, liquidity preferences, to explain demand for money, and he emphasized both the medium of exchange and the store value of functions of money. So you can see that the Keynesian approach is now an improvement on the classical approach to demand for money by incorporating the store of value functions of money. Keynes, 1936, suggested that there are three motives for which to hold the demand for money in an economy, namely the transactional demand for money, the precautionary demand for money, and the speculative demand for money. That the transactional demand for money arises from the medium of exchange function of money in making regular payments of goods. Keynes argued that it relates to the need cash for daily purchases and business exchange. So this means it depends on income. That means the motive to hold money depends on two or three variables. Number one, the income, the level of income, and number two, the volume of transaction. Okay, if the time between receipt and then the number three is the time between receipt. Sometimes individuals receive money every day. Sometimes some people receive money every week or 2 weeks or 1 month, as the case may be. So the amount of money that individual holds for transactional purposes depends on not only the amount of income, but the period between when incomes are received. And therefore, equation 3 shows that the transactional demand for money is is the proportion of income which is kept for transaction purposes, and y is the level of income. Okay, so it's a direct function of the level of income, given that the period between when incomes are received are constant. You can see it on figure 2.1 above. In the figure, the line K represents a linear and direct proportional relation between transactional demand for money and the level of income. The horizontal axis is the level of income, while the vertical axis is the transactional demand for money. When the level of income is 800, 200 is demanded. When the level of income increases to 1000, 250 is demanded. When the level of income increases to 1400, 300 is demanded. Okay. On the other hand, if the income falls due to institutional and structural conditions of the economy, and the value of care is reduced to say 5%, then the new transaction demand curve will be that. Okay. Thus, the case concluded that the major determinant of changes in transactional demand for money is income. It is the movement along KY line. Now, if the term is short, less amount of money will be held for transactional demand purposes, and vice versa. Now, the transactional demand for money will also depend on the spending habit of the consumer. Consumer who is in the habit of consuming much will likely keep more income, and vice versa. Precautionary demand for money is the ability or the desire for an individual to keep money for unforeseen contingencies. And of course, that one is a direct function of income. The more income you have, the more you may likely keep for sicknesses, for any kind of cases, and so and so forth. So that gives rise to equation 5, where precautionary demand for money is a direct function of income. Okay, income level. Then speculative. When we talk about speculative, we are talking about the business. Okay, you speculate. The speculative demand for money is the desire to hold money as a store of value. This can either be stored in the forms of bonds or other securities which yield no interest. You observe that people deliberately choose to hold wealth in the form of money, seeking capital gains if the rate of interest moves in the direction they speculate. So, it means that the speculative demand for money depends on the interest rate, which is demonstrated that as the interest rate, rise, the demand for money, the demand for money will fall. Okay, will reduce. Then, on the other hand, if they expect that the rate of interest will fall, that implies capital gain, because the price of bond will rise. Okay, therefore they prefer to hold bonds to holding money. Thus, demand for money or money used for buying bonds will increase. Okay, and so you can see that V is the demand for money is a decreasing function of interest rate, which is presented uh, in figure below. Where MS is a speculative demand for money, you can see MS is a speculative demand for money. That downward sloping curve from left to right. R is the rate of interest. Graphically, it is shown in figure below. Now, okay, if you look at that figure, at M1, the rate of interest is 12. When the rate of interest falls to 10, the demand for money increased to M1, M2. When the rate of interest falls to 6, the demand for money increased to 3, and so forth. Okay. Then the total demand for money, which is the made up of the transactional demand for money, precautionary demand for money, and then speculative demand for money in equation 7. And all of them, the first two are functions of income, which is transactional demand for money depends on the level of income. Precautionary demand for money also depends on the level of income, while the speculative demand for money depends on the level of interest rate, equation 8. So if you put them together, all the three types of demand for money, you discover that the demand for money is a function of income and the rate of interest, equation 9. Section 8. This unit will look at two learning outcomes: the definition of organization, business organization, and then we'll look at different types of business organization. Business organization is an enterprise set up by individuals, government, or its agencies for the purpose of creating employment and making profit, as well as providing goods and services for human consumption and, of course, satisfaction. In terms of size, there are three types of business organization, namely small, medium, and large-scale enterprises. In terms of ownership, there are two types of business organization, namely private enterprises and public enterprises. Types of business enterprises. So we have private enterprises. Those are enterprises organized, financed, owned, controlled, and managed by private individuals for profit making. They include sole proprietorship, partnership, private limited liability companies, and cooperative societies. So we look at one or two of them, and then we jump to public. Sole proprietorship, otherwise called one-man business, is a private enterprise formed, owned, financed, and managed by one person with the primary aim of maximizing profit. It is the oldest form of business organization, and perhaps the most popular and even common type of business organization in Nigeria. Yes, it is. It is characterized by 1. Ownership. The business enterprise is owned by one person. 2. Objective. The main objective of the one-man business is to make profit. Sources of income. The capital required to set up and run the business is provided by the proprietor from his personal savings or loans. Liability. The sales proprietor has unlimited liability, which is his liability can extend to his personal properties. Legal entity. It is not a legal entity as the owner is not separated from the business. Management. The business is controlled and managed by the sole proprietor himself. The lifespan depends on the lifespan of its owner. The enterprise can fold up at any time. Source of capital for sole proprietorship in Nigeria include personal savings, Okay. Then source from friends, and then trade credit, trade credit, and then 4, loan overdraft from bank, and then 5, grant loan from government. Sometimes government can give loan or grant to sole proprietorship to start a business. Well, it has advantages and disadvantages. Number one advantage is that it requires small capital. The sole proprietorship requires very small capital to set up, so it's not difficult to set up. 2, it is easy to establish. The one-man business is easy to establish because of the small capital requirement, and it may not require much protocol or procedures when setting up the business. 3, taking of quick decisions. Quick decisions are usually taken by the sole proprietor alone without the consent of other workers in the organization. It is easy to manage because it is being managed by one person. It requires more operation. Okay? All profits reaped by the owner. All profits are reaped by the owner. It can thrive in all business environments. And 8, there is privacy in conducting business affairs. There is easy supervision. And then number 10, there is a close owner-customer relationship. So these are some of the advantages of sole proprietorship. Okay. Now, the disadvantages include it bears all the risks. The sole proprietorship bears all the risks in case of a default. Okay, it has unlimited liability. Once the business goes bankrupt, the punishment can be extended to the private property of the proprietor. It is not a separated. It is not a separate legal entity. Okay, then 2, it lacks specialization. The owner is personally involved in every section of the business. He works very hard. He may not observe public holidays and scarcely has rest. In most cases, when he is absent, the business may close down temporarily. So, there is limited growth. Okay, and then partnership. I say we look at 1 or 2 business in private enterprises, and then 1 or 2 business in public enterprises. A partnership may be defined as a type of business organization in which 2 to 20 persons agree legally to set up and manage with sole aim of making profit. Partnership is usually formed by an association of 2 to 20 persons who, by an agreement, usually legal, decided to pool their resources, which is capital and or skills together and establish business enterprises. You see, this is to say that the partnership is formed by 2 or between 2 to 20 persons. Okay, not less than 2, not more than 20. These people pool their resources, both financial and human, together to form partnership. Characteristics: ownership. The partnership is owned by 2 to 20 persons, but in the banking enterprises, it is between 2 and 10. Objective. The main objective of the partnership is profit making. I told you it's part of the private enterprises, and I initially I mentioned that private enterprises are solely for profit making. Just like sole proprietorship, partnership is aimed at profit maximization. Sources of capital. The capital to set up the partnership is provided from many sources, including the contributions to the partners or the loans from friends, from financial institutions, by the partners. Liability. The partners have unlimited liability. Okay? Partners have unlimited liability. That is, their liability, the liability in the event it is incurred will be extended to their personal properties. Last lifespan. The lifespan of the partnership depends on the agreement signed by the partners involved. Legal entity. It is not a legal entity as the partners are not separated from the business management. The business is controlled and managed by the partners. Sources of capital for partners, like I said earlier, from personal contributions from partners. Okay, and the advantages. Partnership enterprises have some advantages. Number one, sharing of risks and liabilities. Okay, they can share. Unlike sole proprietorship that is borne by one person, this one liabilities can be shared, risks can be shared between the partners. Better chance of continuity because even one partner die, the other partners are there to manage it. So it has a better chance of continuity than the sole proprietorship. No legal formalities required, just like the sole proprietorship. The partnership business has no legal entity. Specialization in management. Yes, uh, the principle of sharing of labor may be applied in the managerial and administrative hierarchy of the business. For example, in accounting firms, some accountants may be management accountants, while others may be specialized in auditing or taxation. Greater possibility of profit making. Yes, because the business is bigger, so the profit experience will be bigger. Loan facilities. Yes, it has a better chance of taking loan from sources of credit. However, partnership business has disadvantages or have disadvantages. Number one, unlimited liability. Their liability can be extended to the personal properties of the partners. Limited growth. Yes, because it's not as big as unlimited liability company. The partnership has limited growth. Disagreement between partners can end the business. Risks of dissolution, death, insanity, and bankruptcy of a partner may bring the business to an end. It also has slow decision making, since every partner will want to contribute his own quota. Decision making may be slow and long. False records. Some of the partners, especially active partners, can use false records to gain advantage over others. Inability to raise sufficient capital. Partner cannot invite the public to raise capital, like public limited liability. Members of the public are always afraid to invest because of its unlimited liability. Private limited liability companies. Definition. A private limited liability company is defined as a business formed, financed, owned, and managed by 2 to 50 persons, and whose name must end with the abbreviation of limited. Example: Bluebird Nigeria Limited, Godwill Nigeria Limited, Newspaper Nigeria Limited, etc. Okay, it has similar characteristics with that of partnership, but have legal entity, and the shareholders have limited liability. Okay, the difference is that the all of them, both all of them are still private limited. They are still private enterprises. So all have the objective of profit making. However, the private limited liability companies have legal entity, they have limited liability. Okay, shares cannot be sold, and then the business owned by shareholders. The major aim is to make profit. Advantages: legal, it has large capital compared to partnership. It has legal entity, unlike partnership. There is limited liability, unlike partnership. Efficient management, unlike partnership. Continuity of existence, unlike sole proprietorship and partnership, whose tenure, who last power may end if one, two, or three. Sole proprietorship, because the uh, existence of partnership is like those of the private limited company. Profit is always large compared to the partnership and sole proprietorship. There is possibility of expansion because of the large capital available to set up and run a company. It enjoys internal economies of scale. As long as the enterprise is large, production can be carried out on a large scale, leading to economies of production, economies of large scale production. Disadvantages: limited capital. It's not big enough. Shares are not sold to public, and so you cannot raise too much big money from the public. Shares not easily transferred, and then there's lack of privacy, as companies are required to publicize their accounts by law. They are required by law to publicize their account. Payment of corporate tax. Private limited companies are usually required to pay corporate tax, unlike personal income tax. Lack of personal contact. Delay in decision making, unlike partnership and the sole proprietorship. Now, we have gone to public limited liability company, or what is called joint stock company. A public limited liability company is a business formed, owned, financed, and managed by the public by sale of its shares. Must have a minimum of 7 persons, but no maximum number, and the number of the public limited company must end with the abbreviation PLC. The word public is used to imply that any member of the public is free to purchase shares in the business when shares are advertised for sale. Example: we have companies like Union Bank PLC, First Bank PLC, Dunlop Nigeria PLC, UTC Nigeria PLC, Mobile Nigeria PLC, and so on and so forth. Ownership: the number of shares range from 7 to infinity. It is legal entity, meaning it can sue and it can be sued. It can sue and can be sued in its own name. perpetual existence, and then it has limited liability. Okay, formation. Public limited company must follow some special formalities before registration. They secure incorporation by filing the articles of association and memoranda of association with the registrar of companies. Ownership is separated from management. It has advantages which include legal entity, limited liability. It can raise large capital compared to partnership and sole proprietor. It has advantage of loan facilities and liability have sufficient capital for expansion which can lead to mass production of goods. Okay. Democracy in management. In choosing the directors, shareholders have the right to vote or be voted for at the annual general meeting. Ownership are separated from the management. Recruitment experts. Joint stock company attract men of ability and skill to work for it. Research programs. In joint stock company, there is greater opportunity to undertake research program. However, they have disadvantages which include one, lack of privacy, because they are required by law to publish their accounts. Two, it's usually conflicts of interest. Okay, either between the shareholders, directors, and staff, or between the members, which may affect the efficiency of operations of the business. Because of the number of owners, there is slow decision making. Separation of owners from management, the owners of the business have little or no say in the affairs of the business. Hard to establish. It is very, very difficult to establish. It is not easily established. Then, sources of finance available to joint stock company: loans and overdrafts. Okay. Sales of shares. That's two. Shares of debentures. Then bill of exchange. So, equipment leasing. Okay. And then retain profit back. That retain profits or plough back profit. Trade credit. Hire purchase. These are some of the sources of finance available to public limited company. Then I want to give the class a reading assignment. Class to read from shares. That's item 8.2. You should read from shares to the end of the session. That's section 8. You should read throughout. Okay, to the end of section 8. Now section 9. Study section 9. This study is on international trade. And then we have two learning outcomes for study section 9. One is definition of trade, and two, explain some theories on international trade. In its narrow sense, international trade is the trading activities in tangible goods like cars, cocoa, maize, etc. between peoples and governments of two or more countries. But buying and selling of physical goods is accompanied by services. Thus, in its broader sense, international trade refers to the sale or purchases of goods and services between governments and peoples of two or more countries. In a case of two countries, we have bilateral trade, okay, which is a trading activity between peoples and governments of two countries. Then we have multilateral trade, it is a trading activity between government and peoples of more than two countries. and then we have what is called globalization. This is an advanced level of multilateral trade which involves free flow of goods and services across international boundaries between no maximum number of trading partners. Now, look at the theories of international trade. There are several theories of international trade. Some of them are explained below. We have what is called absolute advantage theory. This theory was propounded by Adam Smith in 1776. The theory states that a country should specialize in the production of goods and services in which it has absolute advantage over other countries. He believed that the value of a good will be determined by the amount of labor that was used for production, that is given to goods A and B. The two countries in the world, it has some assumptions. There are two countries in the world, A and B, producing two goods, X and Y, using two factors, labor and capital. Labor is homogeneous between two countries. There is perfect competition in the two countries. The exchange ratio in the international market lies between the two countries' domestic exchange ratios. This is shown in the table below. See, goods X and Y, countries A and B. With X and Y, countries X and B. Now, if you look at the table, the relative price is determined by the ratio of the labor used in the production of goods. For example, for country A, in isolation, the relative price is then 30 units, okay, then 30 units of X is equal to 60 units of Y. Okay, 30 units of X, 60 units, so X is equal to 2Y. This implies that with 20 units of labor, country A can either produce 30 units of X or 60 units of Y. This means that 1 unit of labor is used to produce 1 unit of good, X, but that same unit of labor can be used to produce 3 units of Y. Using the labor theory of value, half units of X is equal to 3 units of Y in country A. So in summary, it is quite clear that country A has an absolute advantage in the production of good X, Y, while country B has an advantage in the production of good X. So we can now demonstrate that both countries will benefit from international trade if each country can concentrate on the production of goods in which it has absolute advantage. Okay? Our assumption above is that the exchange ratio in the international market lies between that. So that means country A, the domestic exchange ratio of each country are presented by equation 2 and 3 as 1 is a function of Y in country B and 1 X can produce 2Y in country A. In the international market, country A will obtain 2 units of that. This means that specialization in production of different commodities in which each country has absolute advantage will be beneficial to both countries. Alright? The comparative advantage, I'm not talking about the cost. The concept of comparative advantage has been a step further to the concept of absolute advantage. The theory has been the devolution of the Ricardo, okay, in 1886. There is the relevance of the labor theory of value to the concept. Ricardo was of the opinion that the absolute advantage theory may not be sole determinant of international trade for one of the trading countries. Now, earlier assumptions still hold. We can now demonstrate that free trade will benefit both countries, even though one country has absolute advantage in the production of the commodities. Now, look at the table, given the following table. Country B is more efficient in the production of two goods. Country B is producing 200 of good X and 600 of good Y. Okay, so country B has absolute advantage over country A. Do not forget that we are still discussing labor theory of value with regard to international trade. Going by our assumption above, especially two, both countries will benefit by trade. Though country B has absolute advantage in the production of both goods, yet it has comparative advantage in the production of country of good Y. With reference to the table above, the domestic price ratio of both goods X and Y in country A is yes. So country B has absolute advantage because it is producing more quantity of both X and Y. However, if you look at good X, country B can produce only 100 units more than country A. But if you look at the good Y, country B can produce over 400 units of good Y over A. So definitely country B supposed to take the production of good Y and leave the production of good X for country A. Then international trade will be beneficial for both of them. Weaknesses of the comparative advantage theory. There is an implicit assumption in the labor theory. This is why the classical economics have been criticized on this score. The fact is that labor is just a part of resources that go into the production of any commodity. The theory, therefore, is unrealistic. Now we have modern theory of trade. The modern theory of international trade makes use of the concept of opportunity cost. We can demonstrate the gain through trade through the use of opportunity cost concept and do away with the ridiculous assumption that only labor costs determine production. Now, quantity produced is a function of the bundle of resources. The endowment can be used to the labor, land, capital, entrepreneur. The quantity of commodity X and Y produced will be determined by the bundles of resource endowment, which is specified in equation 6. There is no way we equation quantity of produce function of labor, land, capital, entrepreneur, okay, land, capital, entrepreneur, and labor. Okay, the domestic price ratios in each country, as demonstrated earlier, are the opportunity cost of producing each unit of the commodities in question. They should be used to determine which good the country should specialize in its production. Study section 10. Why do we enter into international trade? Reasons for international trade. There are many. Okay? And then we'll look at the differences between international trade and the internal trade. 2 learning outcomes. Reasons for international trade, number 1. Number 2, the differences between international trade and internal trade. For reasons for international trade, the need to satisfy required demand. There are some commodities that we demand in some countries that are not produced in such countries. So international trade will make available goods that are produced in other countries, thereby satisfy the need to satisfy the required demand for such commodity. The need to increase market for home commodity. When you enter into international trade, you create more markets, international market for domestic commodity. Differences in national endowment. Well, differences in national endowment and there is need to equalize benefit from this natural endowment to enter into trade so that we can exchange goods that are not produced in our country but can be consumed. Differences in mineral resources. Yes, the countries are endowed with mineral resources at different volume quantity. So, uh, uh, to benefit from these and differences in mineral resources, we enter into international trade, and that is why diamond in Zaire, gold in South Africa and Ghana, petroleum in Kuwait and Nigeria uh, can be consumed in other parts of the world. Differences in capital goods. Yes, there are some countries that are capital surplus, while others are labor surplus. So, well, in order to benefit from whatever surplus a country has, it has to enter into international trade. For instance, Britain, USA, and Japan have more capital goods than less developed ones like Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, etc. By countries trading with one another, these differences in demand for and supply of resources are greatly reduced since each country's needs become satisfied. Differences between international trade and internal trade. While foreign trade involves exchange of goods and services across national boundaries, while internal trade is not. In foreign trade, buyers and sellers use different currencies, while internal trade use one currency. There is possibility of restriction of trade in international trade, but that is not possible in internal trade. There are differences in systems of weighing, but that is not happening. That is not possible in internal trade. Differences in transportation cost. Yes, even though there's transportation cost in internal trade, the, the amount is not as large as those of international trade. There are also differences in legal system and culture under international trade, but the legal systems are the same in domestic trade. Foreign foreign trade requires knowledge of new languages and interpretations, while in domestic trade, common language is used. Lastly, study section 11. International trade restrictions and balance of payments. Learning outcome. Well, when you have studied in this section, you should be able to explain at least 5 types of international trade restrictions, advance at least 4 reasons for imposition of these, and explain the meaning of balance of payments, explain at least 2 types of balance of payments, and explain at least 2 solutions to the problems of deficit balance of payment. International trade restrictions are taxes or duties imposed on imports and exports to restrict the volume of trade or improve the terms of trade. Instruments of trade restrictions include import duties, foreign exchange control, devaluation, embargo, import monopoly, and import quota. I would like to explain one or two of them. In terms of embargo, this is the prohibition or outright ban placed on some imported goods. Devaluation, by lowering the value of a country's currency vis-a-vis the currencies of other countries' importation, become costly, while exportation becomes cheaper. Import quotas are imposed by imposing a limit on the quantity of goods can be imported at a particular country. Now, why do government impose restrictions on international trade? Number one, to protect infant industries so that the goods can be produced domestically while the imported commodities will be restricted. Two, generation of revenue. Government impose international trade restrictions to generate revenue. For instance, when tariffs are increased, more revenue will be generated for the country. Many countries derive their revenue from import and export duties. Number three, to prevent dumping. Tariffs are imposed to prevent dumping of goods from foreign countries. This is to prevent foreign goods from being sold at prices lower than the home produce. To improve balance of payment deficit by imposing tariffs and also retaliatory measures. This can be used to retaliate against countries which impose tax on them. To prevent the importation of dangerous goods and for employment generation as well as political motives. To promote self-efficiency and to check consumption of harmful commodities. Now, balance of payments. Balance of payment is an annual statement of all payments made by a country to other countries and received from them during a period of time, usually 1 year. There are three accounts in the balance of payments, namely current account. Current account is the type in which records the value of both tangible and intangible export and imports of goods and services. Example, cars, cocoa, banking, insurance, etc. Capital account records the value of capital as investments or loans. The country transferring the capital to other countries is spending such capital, and so it is recorded on its debit debit or expenditure side of its capital account. On the other hand, countries receiving the capital record it on their credit or income side of the capital account. Then the number three type of account is monetary movement account. This is balancing account. If the country's receipts are less than its payment, it can draw on its savings, which is in form of gold, to balance its account. Since BOP must always balance, its items here include loans, increasing investment abroad, exporting goods, aid, grants, etc. Causes of the problem of deficit balance of payment. Deficit balance of payment is a situation when a country's receipt from abroad is less than its payment to abroad. Some of the causes include: 1. Unfavorable terms and balance of payment. Excuse me. Unfavorable exchange rate. Okay. These are the causes of problems of deficit balance of payment. Then how do we resolve them? Increase export, thereby increasing income. Boosting domestic production by giving subsidies and tax relief to producers. This will reduce imports and payments from the country. Cutting down government expenditure abroad will reduce the debt side. Import restriction by imposing restrictions that ensure such as quotas. It is development external services by developing shipping companies and tourist industries will increase invisible earnings over invisible expenditure. Foreign exchange control can limit the outflow of capital account and ease deficit. Domestic currency devaluation. This is the last option in solving the BOP deficit. Devaluation is the deliberate reduction in the value of a national currency in terms of currencies of other countries. It makes countries' goods cheaper for foreigners to buy. This will stimulate exports and discourage imports. Thank you. Thank you very much. I've come to the end of this semester.